Take a moment to slow your breathing and let your thoughts settle a little. There is no need to rush through anything right now. Just allow yourself to become more aware of what has been sitting quietly in the background of your mind. You may have noticed a feeling recently that is not easy to explain in clear words. It can come as a sudden tightness in your chest without any clear reason. Or it may feel like a memory of a certain person appears in your mind out of nowhere. Sometimes it is more like a low, restless energy that stays under everything you do during the day, even when you try to focus on other things. This feeling may seem random at first, but it often feels too specific to ignore. It is like your attention keeps returning to someone, even when you are not trying to think about them. There is a part of you that notices this shift before your logical mind fully understands it. You might find yourself wondering why this is happening now. Why this person, and why at this time? It can feel like something is changing, even without clear proof in the outside world. This creates a kind of inner tension, where your thoughts and feelings do not fully match. What you are sensing is not just imagination. It is your mind and emotions processing connection, memory, and attachment in a deeper way. When someone has been important to you, the emotional imprint does not simply disappear just because there is distance or silence. It stays active inside you in different forms. There are moments when your body reacts before your thoughts do. A sudden tight chest, a wave of emotion, or a strong sense of presence connected to someone who is not physically there. These experiences often happen when emotions are not fully resolved, or when something inside you is still seeking clarity. At the same time, your mind may try to explain it in different ways. It may tell you that you are overthinking, or that you are holding on to something from the past. But your emotional world does not always follow simple logic. It moves through layers that are quieter and more subtle. There is often a phase like this after a strong emotional bond or meaningful connection. Even if nothing is happening externally, internally, things can still be shifting. Feelings that were pushed aside or ignored can slowly rise again when there is space and silence. This is why memories of this person may appear more often than expected. Not because something is actively happening between you in the physical world, but because your mind is still processing what this connection meant to you. Emotional experiences do not end at the same speed for both people involved. In many cases, one person appears to move forward, while the other is still sorting through emotions internally. Sometimes both people are doing this at the same time, but in different ways. One may look calm on the outside, while still dealing with unresolved thoughts inside. It is also possible that your attention is becoming more sensitive right now. When you go through emotional uncertainty, your awareness of certain people and memories can become stronger. Small triggers in daily life can bring back feelings that were thought to be quieted. This does not always mean something external is changing immediately. It often means that something internal is being processed more deeply. Your mind tries to create meaning out of emotional signals, especially when there is distance or lack of closure. You may also notice that you are thinking differently about the connection itself. At one point, your focus may have been on what the other person feels or does. You may have waited for signs, responses, or reassurance from them, even in small ways. But over time, something in you begins to shift. You start to see your own emotional effort more clearly. You begin to notice how much energy you were giving to waiting, hoping, or interpreting silence. This awareness can change how you relate to the situation. Slowly, your attention starts turning back toward yourself. Not because the feelings disappear, but because you begin to understand your own emotional limits more clearly. You start valuing your inner peace in a more stable way, even if part of you still cares. This change is not always dramatic. It can be quiet and gradual. You may still think about the person, but you are less willing to lose yourself in uncertainty. You begin to pull your emotional energy back into your own life. When this shift happens, the emotional dynamic naturally changes. What once felt like constant emotional reaching outward begins to settle. You are no longer as available in the same way emotionally, even if you do not consciously try to do this. This often creates a new kind of awareness in the other person as well, even if there is no contact. When emotional energy changes on one side, the entire pattern between two people can feel different. What was once familiar can start to feel distant or unclear. It is not about control or deliberate influence. It is more about how emotional bonds create habits of attention. When those habits change, the absence of them becomes noticeable. Silence can feel different when it replaces something that once carried emotional weight. You may still have questions about this person. You may still wonder what they are thinking or feeling. This is natural when a connection has had meaning in your life. The mind often tries to complete unfinished emotional stories. At the same time, part of you is also learning something important about yourself. You are learning how your emotions move when you are attached, when you are uncertain, and when you are waiting for clarity that does not come easily. This kind of experience often brings emotional growth, even if it feels confusing in the moment. You begin to understand your own patterns more clearly. You see how strongly you can feel, and also how important it is to protect your inner balance. There may still be moments when this person comes into your thoughts strongly. Sometimes it may feel sudden or unexpected. Other times it may feel familiar, like a memory that returns during quiet moments of the day or night. But alongside that, there is also a growing sense of awareness in you. You are no longer fully lost in the uncertainty the way you might have been before. Something inside you has become more steady, even if emotions still come and go. This stability changes how you experience the connection. Instead of constantly reaching outward, you begin to observe your feelings with more distance. You start to recognize what is memory, what is emotion, and what is expectation. Over time, this helps you return to yourself more fully. Not by forcing feelings away, but by understanding them better. You begin to see that your emotional world is not controlled by one person, even if they once had a strong place in it. At the same time, the bond you felt does not simply disappear. Meaningful connections leave traces in memory and emotion. They shape how you understand closeness, care, and attachment in future experiences as well. What changes is your position within it. You are no longer standing in the same place emotionally that you once were. You are observing, learning, and slowly releasing the parts that kept you waiting in uncertainty. And as this happens, your inner world becomes quieter in a different way. Not empty, but more centered. You begin to feel your own presence again, without it being constantly pulled outward by expectation. This is where real emotional change often begins. Not in sudden answers from others, but in how you return to yourself. In how you understand your feelings without being overwhelmed by them. In how you carry your own attention with more care. Even if thoughts of this person still appear, they no longer define your entire emotional state. They pass through your awareness rather than taking it over completely. This shift may be subtle, but it is meaningful. And as time continues, you may find that what once felt heavy starts to feel more distant. Not because it was unimportant, but because you have grown beyond the emotional intensity that once surrounded it. What remains is understanding. Understanding of what you felt, why it mattered, and how it shaped you. And from that understanding, a quieter and more stable version of yourself begins to take shape. Take a slow breath and allow your attention to settle for a moment. There is no need to force anything or rush toward answers. Just become aware of what has been quietly building inside your thoughts over time. There may be a feeling that is hard to define clearly, but it keeps returning in small ways throughout your day. It can show up as a sudden heaviness in your chest, or a strange tightening that appears without warning. Sometimes it feels like a person you thought you were moving away from suddenly comes back into your mind very strongly. Other times, it feels like an emotional pressure that sits under everything else you are doing. This does not always follow a clear pattern. It can feel random on the surface, but deep down it feels meaningful. It is like your attention keeps drifting towards someone, even when you are not trying to think about them. There is a part of you that notices this before your logical thinking catches up. You may find yourself questioning why this is happening again. Why this person keeps returning to your thoughts, even when there has been distance or silence. It can feel like something unfinished inside you is still active, even if nothing is happening outside in the physical world. This is often how emotional connections behave when they have not been fully resolved. They do not disappear instantly. They stay in different layers of memory, emotion, and awareness. Sometimes they show up in thoughts, sometimes in dreams, and sometimes in simple emotional reactions during daily life. Your body can react before your mind understands what is happening. A shift in mood, a sudden memory, or a wave of emotion can appear without a clear reason. These experiences are often connected to emotional attachment that has not fully settled yet. At the same time, your mind may try to explain everything in simple terms. It may tell you that you are overthinking or imagining patterns that are not really there. But emotional processing does not always follow logic. It moves through deeper parts of awareness that are not always easy to control. There is often a phase like this after meaningful emotional experiences. Even when contact has ended or become distant, the inner processing continues. Feelings that were not fully expressed or understood can slowly rise again when life becomes quieter. This is why memories of a certain person can feel stronger again after time has passed. It is not necessarily because something new is happening externally, but because your inner world is still organizing what this connection meant to you. Emotional meaning takes longer to settle than physical distance. Sometimes one person appears to have moved forward while the other is still processing. But often, both people are going through their own internal changes in different ways. One may look calm and stable while still carrying unspoken thoughts inside. You may also notice that your own awareness is changing. You are no longer reacting in the same way you used to. The emotional intensity that once pulled you outward so strongly may now feel slightly more distant, even if the feelings are still present. This shift is important, even if it feels subtle. It means your attention is slowly returning back toward yourself. Not because you stopped caring, but because you are beginning to understand your own emotional limits more clearly. There was a time when your focus may have been mostly on the other person. You may have waited for signs, replies, or small pieces of reassurance that helped you feel connected. That waiting created a pattern where your emotional balance depended on something outside of you. Over time, that pattern begins to feel heavier. Not in a sudden way, but in a quiet realization that your own peace should not depend entirely on someone else's actions or silence. This understanding does not remove your feelings, but it changes how you carry them. Slowly, you begin to pull your attention back inward. You start noticing your own emotional needs more clearly. You begin to value your own stability, even while part of you still remembers the connection deeply. This is not an immediate change. It happens gradually, through small moments of awareness. You may still think about the person, but you no longer lose yourself in the uncertainty in the same way you once did. When this shift happens, the emotional pattern between you and that person also begins to feel different. Not because something is being forced, but because attention and emotional energy are no longer flowing in the same way they used to. What once felt like constant emotional reaching outward begins to settle. The urgency fades slightly. The waiting becomes less intense. The emotional space between you becomes more noticeable. This can also create awareness in the other person, even without direct contact. When someone who was emotionally present in a certain way becomes more centered and less reactive, the absence of that pattern can be felt. It is not about control or influence. It is simply how emotional bonds work over time. When the dynamic changes on one side, the overall feeling of the connection naturally shifts as well. You may still have thoughts about this person. You may still wonder what they feel or whether anything will happen again. This is natural when a connection has had emotional importance in your life. At the same time, something inside you is also changing. You are beginning to see your own emotional patterns more clearly. You are noticing how much energy you once gave to waiting, hoping, and trying to understand silence. This awareness brings a new kind of clarity. You begin to recognize that your emotions are valid, but they do not have to control your entire inner world. You can feel deeply without losing your balance completely. There may still be moments when memories return strongly. A place, a sound, a time of day, or a simple thought can bring everything back for a moment. These emotional echoes are part of how memory and attachment work. But over time, these moments start to pass more gently. They no longer pull you into the same emotional intensity as before. They become part of your experience, not the center of it. You begin to understand the connection in a more balanced way. You see what it meant, what it taught you, and how it shaped your emotional awareness. This understanding becomes more important than the uncertainty itself. At the same time, the bond does not simply disappear. Meaningful emotional experiences leave traces. They change how you see relationships, how you understand care, and how you recognize your own needs. What changes most is your position within the experience. You are no longer standing inside confusion in the same way. You are slowly moving into observation, understanding, and emotional release. As this continues, your inner world becomes more stable. Not because everything is resolved externally, but because you are learning how to hold your emotions without being overwhelmed by them. Even if thoughts of this person still appear, they no longer define your entire emotional state. They move through your awareness instead of taking it over completely. This creates space inside you that did not exist before. That space allows you to reconnect with yourself more fully. You start to feel your own presence again, without constantly measuring it through another person's attention or absence. This is where deeper emotional change begins, not in sudden answers or external closure, but in how you return to your own life, your own thoughts, and your own emotional balance. Over time, what once felt intense begins to soften, not because it was meaningless, but because you have grown through it. Your emotional world expands beyond one connection and becomes more centered within yourself. What remains is understanding. Understanding of what you felt, why it mattered, and how it shaped you into someone more aware of your own emotional depth. From that understanding, a calmer version of you begins to emerge. You are no longer only the version of yourself who was waiting, reaching, or hoping. You are becoming someone who can feel deeply and still remain grounded. Someone who can care without losing themselves in the process. And even if the thoughts of this person still appear from time to time, they no longer hold the same power over your inner world. They are part of your memory, not your direction. This shift may feel quiet, but it is meaningful. It shows that your emotional awareness is growing stronger and more stable. You are no longer shaped only by what you receive from others, but also by what you understand within yourself. With time, even the emotional noise begins to settle. What once felt confusing starts to feel more organized in your mind and heart. You begin to see the full picture more clearly without needing immediate answers. And in that clarity, you slowly return to yourself. Not as someone who lost anything, but as someone who has learned how to carry their emotions with more understanding, more patience, and more inner strength.